If you take a quantity of risk, it'll be seen differently by 10 different people. I am often told that I'm taking risks, and I don't see it that way. I'm just like, no, this is what it's going to take to move forward. Manufacturing is infinite. This place will never, ever, ever be perfect. We'll never have enough capacity. We can never offer enough materials and enough processes or whatever. So this can keep me busy for the foreseeable future.
I am here in Reno, Nevada with the founder and CEO of SendCutSend, Jim Belosic, and he is crushing building massive factories. Do you want to just talk about manufacturing in America in general over the past few years and where you kind of see things evolving?
Yeah. Manufacturing in the US, especially what you hear on social media and on the internet, it's making a huge resurgence. It's popular to make in America again. There's a lot of momentum behind it. People are excited. There's conferences and stuff around hey, instead of outsourcing everything, we need to make it in the US. I didn't hear a lot of that in the early 2000s or anything. It was how fast can I offshore something so that I can make some more profit? So I wish that I could say that we timed it so that we were right on the leading edge of that wave. I'm not that smart. We're just kind of lucky, I guess. We've been doing this for 7 years.
Serendipity in what you actually wanted to focus on.
Totally. This whole thing was started out of a selfish need anyway. I needed parts, and so I decided to make them myself. That's how a lot of manufacturers have started. So I think that there's a lot of momentum. People are making cool stuff in the US again. For a long time, it was focused on aerospace and robotics and ITAR controlled stuff. But the thing that I'm most excited now is people are making the basics here again. People are making cutlery. People are making washers and screws and nuts and bolts and steel. They're making the foundational stuff again. So it's exciting, but I also think that it's also been happening for a long time. It's just people haven't seen it. As
you
much.
said earlier, the marketing is basically just not there.
Yeah. I don't want to say that we're, oh man, we're leading the charge with making stuff in America. Guys have been doing that for 100 years. I think about all the companies that we deal with, these legacy second or third generation suppliers. And maybe they started the company in the 70s or the 80s or something like that. They had a handful of customers that they've had for the entire time. And they're not good at the Google. They're not good at Instagram. They don't know what social media is. So there's this new crop of engineers who need stuff made. And they go online. They're like, oh my God, no one manufactures this anymore, or this can't be done, or we forgot how to make this. My argument is you haven't looked hard enough. Back in the old days, in 1995, if I needed a part made for my go-kart, I'd have to beg my dad for a ride to the industrial park, and then I'd knock on doors until I got enough referrals to find old Joe, at the machine shop who would make me something. That's how a lot of manufacturing is done. Now, we're in that new generation where we have the manufacturing capability, but then we also are leveraging with accessibility and marketing and exposure. So that's a trend that I see that's really encouraging. Just getting people to know that, hey, not only are we doing new things in manufacturing, but there's also some exposure to stuff that's been here for 40 years that you may not have known about.
Yeah, I think one of the best things is, or the best way to do business is really trusting the people that you're working with and building that trust. And you talked a little bit earlier about, showing up and, if you want to go work with some factory, even it's 2,000 square feet or whatever, the right way to do that is not by looking online. It's by just showing up in person or sending a letter or an email or calling or whatever. How do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm part of the Oregon Trail generation, basically, where I grew up a period of my life where there was no internet, or cell phones. And then, we got internet and cell phones, so I can kind of have a leg in either side. So if I can't find something online, that is not a deterrent. I'm how can I, make some calls? There's a part of town that I can go to that has a bunch of industrial space. I'm going to go knock on doors or whatever. So in order to find really good suppliers, the newer generation is online. You can read their reviews and stuff, but really it's going to be based on referral. It's going to be based on going there, shaking a hand, talking to them, seeing what they can do. and then building that trust. And I think a lot of people treat suppliers as like indentured servants, and we have a contract, you better do this. I see it as more of like an employee, and we take really good care of our employees. And we see our vendors or our drivers or our delivery guys no different than our employees. So we want to make sure that they want to work with us and we want to work with them. One of our tests is like, would we want to have a beer together? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is yes. But if you're at some vendor and you're like, I would never sit next to this guy at lunch, like go find a different one. It'll make your working relationship so much better if it's just a cool guy.
Yeah. And the reason that I like came out here and was so interested to come out here was because I ran into so many companies that like use SendCutSend parts and buy from you guys, and everyone loves it. Like everyone loves SendCutSend. You mentioned when you are interacting with some FedEx guy or an employee and they're doing well, you try to like kind of let them know that they're doing well.
Yeah, we call them fun coupons.
Yeah. Explain fun coupons.
So we recycle a lot of metal. I hope our accounting team isn't listening to this. Anyway, Ivana, I need you to like log off right now. Anyway, we get paid in cash from one of our recyclers. And I don't really want to know too much about his business model, but anyway, he really likes cash. So we get cash, but we redistribute that into the org. So if that's a FedEx driver, who stayed a little late because we were slow loading the truck, hey, here's a fun coupon, $100 bill or whatever. But we use those to lubricate the ecosystem and show people that they're doing a good job. Employees are always eligible for spot bonuses, if they're doing something super cool, going above and beyond. But same thing with vendors. Like a lot of times people get invited to like golf tournaments or whatever. They get a bottle of wine from a vendor. We try and do the preemptive strike. I'm like, hey, I want to give you guys a hotel room at a really cool place, or I want to show thank you with a bottle of champagne or whatever. And they're not used to that.
First foot forward.
Yeah, and it's because I don't know. I've never been wronged with generosity. If I'm overly generous and it doesn't reciprocate, it's still fine. People have a good impression of us and the company. But oftentimes that generosity, it pays back too. We've had FedEx guys that have put on chains, to come and do their one delivery here because they were like, I'm not on the road today, but I put on chains because I love you guys and you guys take good care of me. So we're not the only ones doing that either. There's a lot of manufacturers and just really cool companies in the world that you're never going to hear about. But they're just cool guys. They just haven't scaled up to a certain size because it's difficult to scale that.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about like what has been the biggest moment where you were just kind of putting that first foot forward and expressing generosity and all that stuff, and it just came back in a very serendipitous way?
So one example of, I guess you could call it generosity, but it's also kind of blended with having a good product. One of our early customers, he was just a dude in his garage, needed a quantity of one or something, and everyone else told him to, pound sand. We're not going to do quantity one. But for us, that's our entire business model. I'll do quantity one, quantity a million. I don't really care. And he's like, hey, I'm kind of in a rush. I work on this on the weekends. So if there's any way that I could get it by Friday, please, that'd be amazing. So we're like, okay, no problem. So we put a little bit of a rush on it. We know he's a hobbyist, and that's how I run my hobbies. I need everything at my doorstep on Friday because I have like 3 hours on Saturday that I can use it. So we get him his parts, and Sunday night comes and he emails us. And he's like, dude, you guys were awesome. I got my project done. He's making like an electric skateboard. I got my project done. I'm going to tell the guys at work about you. I was like, oh, awesome. Thanks. And we didn't really think twice about it. Well, like a week goes by and we're getting onboarding letters from a very large rocket ship company. And they're like, hey, so-and-so told us about you. You have this cool product. And I was like, okay, thank you. So then all of a sudden there's 200 or 300 engineers that are using us within this company from like a little bit of generosity, but really it's just trying to have
like
a good product.
Day earlier or a little bit smoother.
Yes. Yes. So the more you can do that, it's not about saving money. It's an investment. And that was one of our early mottos is don't save money.
Don't save money.
Don't save money. Yeah, we had it laser engraved on a piece of stainless. I'll have to find it, but don't save money.
In what ways did you kind of like implement that? Because obviously you are trying to be, you said in another thing where you mentioned you want to be frugal, not cheap.
Yes.
Right?
Frugal, not cheap.
Yeah. Frugal,
And
not cheap.
That's tied into don't save money. Meaning, if you need a piece of equipment and you can cheap out and get the one that's half the price or it's used or whatever, that's being cheap because you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. You're trying to save some money, but you're going to pay for it in maintenance or downtime or whatever. So we're like, be frugal, be smart about your purchase. But if the best purchase happens to be triple the cost, that is still the best purchase. It's the most frugal. You can be wasteful and just buy the Ferrari because you like the colors or something stupid. Like, we don't do that.
You're being thoughtful about how you're spending money.
Yes.
Kind of thing.
So don't save money is about like, hey, if we don't put a piece of candy in this package, it'll save us 7 cents, or if, hey, we don't include a sticker or something like that, it's going to save us a little money. If we ship it a day slower, it saves us $4. Don't save money. Go for that good experience. And oftentimes we find that the more we spend, the better that experience is, the more customers we get, the longer lifetime that we have. So I don't know. We don't have a CFO right now because
that probably helps.
Yeah, we run the company based on gym math, and gym math is you do what feels right, and it feels right to overnight stuff when they need it before their wedding or something like that. It makes sense to hand carry something on a plane because it has to get there. Otherwise, this guy's going to get fired. Or, it makes sense to invest in the absolute best tools so that they don't break and we have no downtime. So I think from the outside, it looks like we're blowing a lot of money, and when we could save a little bit here and there. But my argument is, the more we spend on cool stuff like that, the more it comes back.
The way that I think about that is Jeff Bezos had this line where early on in Amazon, they basically implemented something where if a customer had already purchased a item, let's say a book, sometimes people just, they're busy, their lives are busy, and so they'll forget that they ordered the thing. And so what they implemented was basically this automatic thing where it would tell a customer if they had already ordered it and did you mean to try it? Or are you trying to reorder it? And a lot of executives and stuff inside of Amazon push back and were like, that will at least short term burn money. And Jeff was like, no, what happens is, yes, we do lose $10, $20, $30 or $50 or $100 today. But over the long term, we're building this customer relationship, and them having this magical kind of experience, like Amazon's looking out for you, is worth it.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Which I don't think they're doing that anymore because I've ordered the same thing 50 times. I have a pile of them.
Andy Jassy's now in charge.
Yeah. I often do, I don't know if you'd call it a race condition. If I need a part or a nut or a bolt or whatever, I'll order it from 5 different vendors, or I'll order it on Amazon from 6 of their vendors and then McMaster and then whoever else I can. Whoever gets here first wins. And then I have good intentions of returning it, and I never do. But yeah, the investment in the magical experience is something that it needs to be ingrained in the culture. And actually, I love that we have a lot of people who are skeptical of it. Especially at first, they're like, hey man, we're spending too much money on this. And I'm like, good. I'm glad that you're not just blowing stuff. You're not just ordering crazy Snap-on tools when Craftsman will work just as good. But then they get to see what happens, and they get to see the magic, especially after you're here for a year or two, and you start to hear the stories and see the feedback that we get. It makes you want to double down on it. You're like, what else can we do?
You basically, it's kind of gone all in. Ironically, you're doing the marketing online and stuff, but really, if you're just making someone's life much better, they just magically will start telling people about you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, marketing sucks. Dude, we've spent so much.
Go for it. Maybe we do.
My head of marketing is sitting across from me. She's not super happy about that statement. But dude, we've spent millions and millions of dollars on Google ads and all kinds of different stuff. When really, if you invest in that really cool experience or just reinvest in product, that's all you need. It takes longer. It's not VC backable. Like you're not going to have this, crazy, hockey stick growth from investing in Google ads or, D2C marketing or whatever, but it pays off ultra long term. And then, the best advertising is word of mouth. And that's 1,000,000% true. And I think that's why a lot of these legacy manufacturers are in business without being on the internet. They've never had a website. They don't know how to use email, or they're like, hey, it's Jim and Aaron at AOL.com. I've seen that from vendors. Those guys never had to do additional marketing or whatever because they had a really great product, a really great customer experience that was like handshake based, and they've been able to do it for 40 years. Except now they're retiring, and not everyone, they don't have a son or a daughter or whatever that's taking their place. So,
yeah. And I want to go back now to kind of like the start. There's very few businesses that I know of that have kind of bootstrapped. I think you started SendCutSend in 2018.
Yeah.
And now you are doing millions and millions and millions of dollars in orders to, I don't know how many customers, like tens of thousands of customers.
Yeah, I think it's 250 or 300,000 customers.
250, 300,000 customers.
Yeah.
Taking back to like when you started the company, I know you initially spent like, $750,000 on a laser. How much, how'd you make that decision?
Well, and the thing is, like, I didn't spend 750 grand on a laser. I bought the laser that was worth that, but 7% down. Yeah.
Oh, how'd that happen?
Financing, man. So when no one's going to lend you money, you have to get creative. And so, Amada makes our lasers. They're amazing. There are other great manufacturers out there. But Amada was the ones who believed in us, and they had flexible payment terms. They offer financing in-house. So you go to Wells Fargo, I banked with them since I was 18 or whatever. And when I really needed them, I'm like, hey guys, can I get an equipment loan? They're like, no. How long have you been in business? Well, I haven't. I'm starting a business. So they're like, get out. The right equipment vendor who has a program where they lend in-house or they believe in you, they'll go to bat for you. And so, yeah, I didn't have to come up with 750,000 cash. I just had to come up with the down and then hope and pray that I could make the payments. But that was the initial seed of this business. Was I was running a software company, and I was very happy with that software company. But I also am like a fabricator and, kind of maker guy. And so I wanted to get some parts made, and it was difficult. Even with my connections and driving around industrial areas, it's still very difficult to get a single part made. So I was like, I'll tell you what, I will buy this laser, and if I can get it to just make its payment and pay for the guy operating it, then that'll be my fun SendCutSend business that I'll never have to worry about. That only lasted like a month. And then we got a little bit busier. So, starting off with no money, it's.
Are you glad that you started out with not a whole lot of cash in your bank account? Like, did that kind of set the right foundation, or was that a more difficult thing?
Oh yeah. I think that if I would have taken $10 million of VC money, oh my God, you don't know what the hell you're doing. So you're buying the wrong equipment. You're buying too much equipment. You're hiring the wrong people. As soon as you take VC money, they're like, oh, well, you need a CFO and you need legal counsel and you need this and this and this. No, dude, I needed laser operators. I needed some guy to drive the forklift. You need a shipping line. You need, basic stuff. You get a CFO way down the road. You get a controller way down the road. You get all this other stuff later on. So I've seen a lot of companies that get money and they buy the wrong shit. When you're constrained, you spend a lot of time thinking about, is this the right move? And you move slow because you have to move cautiously. We've still made mistakes. I lit money on fire on some of the wrong stuff.
Do you want to go into that?
Yeah. The frugality versus cheapness, that's a really tough line to walk, and especially when you're brand new. I was
sometimes you accidentally do something, and
I bought some stuff on eBay that didn't quite work out. We actually, one of our packaging machines, the very first one, I found the company that makes them and they're like 30 grand. And I was like, there's no way in hell I'm spending that. So I found one on eBay for like $3,000 and it kind of worked, but it caused us probably $35,000 worth of headaches. And then I remember distinctly the day that I picked it up with the forklift and dumped it in the dumpster. And
Wow.
we spent like an afternoon beating the shit out of this thing. Then I bought another one used for like $5,000 and it was the same damn thing. So that's what taught me like, hey, maybe I should have just bought the $30,000 one first. But it also, if I had a bunch of VC money, I probably would have bought 10 of them. And I probably would have bought the $100,000 machines with all the automation and stuff that doesn't work for a high mix environment, you know? So constraints are a big thing here. That's all we do. Work within constraints, get really creative. Money is one of the better constraints that you can have. It forces you to make really honest decisions.
Can you talk through basically what it was like for the first month after you bought the laser and you're like first setting it up, you're figuring out the forklift guy and all this stuff. And then also like the first year and scaling up and starting to get orders.
First month, I was like, I have a little bit of runway. Like payments aren't due for a little bit. So that's the other trick is we never negotiate on price of a machine. We negotiate on terms. Our payment structure is way more important than the final price of the machine. So for us, if I can get the machine, get it operational, and then make the first payment 3 or 4 months down the line, like oftentimes we can have the machine like pretty much paid off before we make the first payment. So we had negotiated some like delayed payment or deferred payment when we landed the machine. So I was like, okay, I got a few months and we'll just kind of learn how to operate it. We'll get some friends and family to place orders and we'll figure this thing out. Well, like week 1, they sent a trainer out, machine was installed and they're like, okay, let's cut some parts. Let's cut some geometry. And I was like, okay, I know the first thing that I want. It's the trucker mud flap girl. You know, I was like, I want one of those. We load it into their software and it like blue screened the machine. I was like, oh, that's weird.
That wasn't supposed to happen.
Let's try that again. So we load it again, blue screens. And the trainer's there and he's like, well, it's because you have all these like compound curves and, you know, because she's a curvy lady, the trucker mud flap girl. And so he's like, you know, we really don't handle that type of geometry with all these like complex splines and everything. It's, you know, where's like a square with holes in it? And I was like, are you shitting me? Like, we are an on-demand manufacturer. People upload all kinds of stupid shit. They're going to upload like dragonfly wings and, crazy hexagonal patterns and art and beautiful things. And then, you know, also holes with squares, but we have to handle everything. So anyway, long way of saying the machine didn't work. Granted, it cuts really well. It's a great machine, but for our particular client base, it worked. So it was all hands on deck. We're like, I guess we have to write our own software for this. So that's what we did. Jacob Graham, our CTO, like spent a weekend without sleep and hacked something together so that we could convert these weird file types into something that the machine could handle. And that was like the basis of our software stack. From that moment on, we realized like, oh, this is a software first company. It's not just going to be this like fun side project for Jim and his hobbies. It's going to be like a real effort. But it forced us to figure some things out really, really quickly.
At the beginning, did you start out being able to kind of deliver this very delightful, early and often, you know, putting the first, you know, best foot forward sort of situation, sort of experience for your customers?
Yeah.
Or were there any delays at the beginning because like machines didn't work or they didn't work as expected, and having to figure that out?
Yes, both. So I would say at the beginning, it was way easier for us to deliver this magic experience because we had no volume. So everything works amazing when you have, 5 orders a day. We used to call it shipping with Jim. So orders would come in the morning. We'd cut them all, get them all ready. And then after lunch, like I would pack everything up and then I'd drive to FedEx every day. And so sometimes like shipping with Jim got later and later in the day. And then sometimes I need a couple people to help with the shipping with Jim show. And it was fine because we were shipping so early. You know, we were beating expectations so far by having low volume. Everything was happy. Everything was great. If there was an anomaly, like we ran out of material or a machine went down, we had a little bit of cushion. We had a couple days to make it right. We'd still be able to ship on time. Well, when volume increases, all of that goes out the window. Now you're constantly fighting capacity. And we still do to this day. We're always fighting capacity. I remember in the early days, we had moved into our second building so that we could have 2 lasers. Because we realized, like, holy crap, our whole business is based on this one machine operating. And it started out at 1 shift, then it ran 2, and then we got up to 4 shifts. And we're like, oh my God, if this thing dies, like if it dies for like 2 weeks, we're fucked. So we're like, okay, let's get a bigger building. Let's put 2 lasers in it. That second laser, it worked for like a week, and then it was down for 6 weeks. And so that was a time when we were incredibly fragile. We were barely meeting deadline, or we were missing deadline, and we were running 24/7 with a super tiny crew. I remember waking up in the middle of the night and I'd check the cameras to check on the crew, because sometimes we only had 1 guy in the building, you know, or so I'd check the crew and like shout out to Kevin for running. I checked the cameras and there's like Kevin, no shirt, like he's just in his boxers because he's like sprinting around carrying metal. And I'm like, I don't know if I should see this. But just making sure that everyone's alive, you know, that was a super, super hard time for us. So we're like, okay, we always have to have spare capacity. You have to have surge capacity, reserve capacity in order to meet deadline. To anyone listening, if you go into quick turn manufacturing, holy shit, it's super, super hard. If we had 8 weeks to do anything, oh my God, it's all the math changes. But when you get into quick turn, redundancy becomes your friend. So we're like, oh, we'll add more lasers. Well, guess what? When you add more lasers, the math is forcing you to keep those lasers busy. It's expensive to have a laser sitting idle, you know, just for emergency purposes. So you're like, well, we'll increase demand a little bit and fill up the machine, and then your redundancy goes away. So you're always fighting this crazy battle. We got pretty good at it. And with scale comes a little bit of luxury to have an idle machine. But then again, when you get CFOs, they don't like that. No. They want maximum uptime. So I don't know, dude, it's super hard, but I love it. I mean, it's like, you know, everyone always says it's Factorio in real life. It's Factorio in real life.
Yeah. Outside of the actual machines, you know, having redundancy and those types of risks at the very beginning, what were you most afraid of?
I was afraid of growing too fast and then the rug getting pulled out from under me. You know, we're always trying to build a moat. I have so much invested in this company that, you know, if China decides, like, you know, they're like, hey, we can ship to the US in 1 day and we're 1/10 the cost. I'm like, oh, what happens to my company?
Disappears. Yeah.
So whether that can happen or not, I'm trying to build a moat against it. You know, I'm like, how can I be able to ship in 1 day? How can I have, you know, 90% lower prices? You know, how can I figure all that out? So at the very beginning, that was a real worry, that someone with bigger, deeper pockets would come in and kick our butt. And today that's still a worry. You know, we're a little more comfortable, but technology is advancing so fast. You know, it's easier to start this type of business today than it ever has been. But it's very, very difficult to do it at scale. So we're constantly adding more equipment, more square footage, more humans, more software, in order to make sure that we're delivering a great product and a great, you know, magical experience, like you said, but then also preventing, you know, some foreign adversary from, you know, taking our hard-earned efforts.
I'd imagine that for, you know, to kind of mitigate some of that risk, yes, maybe you can get a part slightly cheaper. And there's some of the things where China could just turn on tomorrow and say, we're going to do overnight shipping and stuff like that for parts. But by building like really strong customer love, you kind of mitigate that risk. And so even though, you know, you're spending some money, like you said, it actually counterintuitively makes it so the likelihood that those customers will disappear overnight also really goes down.
Yeah, well, the goal is if you're equal on everything, you're equal on shipping, you're equal on price, you're equal on quality. I want them to choose our company because of that relationship, or they get a cool sticker, or hey, we sponsored their first robotics team, or whatever. So all things being equal, I still want to win. But when things are not equal, that's when I still want to win too. So, if someone is shipping faster and I just can't do it, how do I win? Well, I have to win on price, or I have to win on relationship. I can always double down on that relationship and continue to win. But the thing that no one tells you is people shop with their wallet. They will say one thing. They'll be like, I'm buying American made and, whatever. And sure as shit, they will go and offshore, especially when the price is half as much. It's just hard for people to walk the walk and talk the talk.
I love same thing with like content. It's like people may like the post on Twitter, but the truth is you watch the views and you watch the watch time. Yep. And if people are actually watching it, like they'll say a whole bunch of nice things, but if you made a thing that isn't great, they just won't watch it.
Yeah.
Which is very simple. And so you actually know that that's your metric.
Yeah. People will tell you one thing and then they're not trying to be mean.
No.
But they will.
It's just a very human thing to not try to be an asshole. Well,
and when you're in that voting booth all by yourself, you're going to do what's really on your conscience. And, that's our number one battle right now, is making sure that, as competitors, especially offshore, get better and better, that we're right there with them. So as fast as they're trying to improve and go faster and lower prices, we have to move 10 times faster. And we're doing it in a constrained environment. We're not getting electricity as cheap or raw materials as cheap or whatever. But it's still 100% possible. That's the thing. People are like, oh, we can never be competitive. Bullshit. No, dude, we pay like $3 a pound for aluminum, $3.20, something like that. That's such a small portion of the final price of an actual part. Like, so this is my fidget toy. This is for a quantity of one. This is a few $100 probably. So the half a pound of aluminum, like that doesn't factor in the price. So a lot of people are complaining on the internet. They're going, oh yeah, it's because Chinese are subsidizing the aluminum. Dude, if I got my aluminum for free, it doesn't affect the final price that much. So it's not an excuse. Like, try harder, do better with what you got. Use those constraints. If my constraint is that aluminum is $3 a pound and I need to be competitive, I'll find a way to be more competitive with better machines, better process, better strategy, better training, all kinds of stuff. We have so many other things to do than just like cry about China getting their raw materials for less.
Yeah, and I love, so earlier today when we were kind of just walking around and you were showing me the factory, you're talking about basically being able to see, a lot of people, there's the whole financialization of like everything. And what you're doing is kind of the exact opposite of that, where yes, you have the top line numbers and stuff, but then you're actually trying to kind of learn about how your business is evolving by literally just walking around and seeing what's being made, seeing how the customer orders are coming in and changing, who's starting, who's, increasing their orders. Is there some new person at some company that suddenly out of the blue starts ordering, even though there's some other engineer that's also ordering? How did you kind of come to that philosophy, and what were you doing at the beginning?
It's not a philosophy. Like,
I know you say that, dude, but like most people don't do it.
These companies like SendCutSend or any other manufacturing company or anything where you're producing a product, you have a factory. These are not companies that are run on spreadsheets. You can't run this company remotely. You can't look at some dashboards and make decisions. You have to go out. You have to hear the machines. Like, before we started, I was like, why the hell is that machine so loud? Sure. Yeah, one of the pumps is funny on it. So you have to know what's going on. You have to have that pulse. You can see a lot through dashboards. Like, we invest a lot of time and effort in data. And I love all the data. I think it complements the floor, though. If I had to choose one, I would choose walking the floor. And I'd rather have no data. I have a really good pulse on what's going on by seeing how many totes are there, or seeing how low the FedEx truck is sagging, because that means we filled it up with a lot of steel that day, right? When the front wheels of the FedEx truck are barely touching the ground, like, that's good volume. I don't need data to tell me that. So, looking at orders, talking to customers, it's not, I am not some kind of like groundbreaking, thought leader on this. It's just, that's how you run a business. Like, you should be out there sweating with the guys. We have good lighting, good air conditioning, good heating, noise reduction, good lunches, because that's what I want. I'm out there with them. And if something's too loud or something stinks or whatever, we fix it because
you want to work in the conditions if your position was reversed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I kind of think it's also for, if you have a specific type of, you're creating that type of environment where the employees are actually going to be happy to work. And you're also trying to know people's names, and you try to let people know if they're doing a good job or just interact with them and stuff. You're basically front loading the customer experience through your employees. So if you have an amazing, you can't say like, I want to have an amazing customer experience if the employees are, hate their job and hate living,
Yes. Yeah. No, 1,000,000%. If you take really good care of your employees, they're going to take really good care of the customers. I don't know, if you're mean to your dog, you're probably going to be mean to your wife and your kids and everything else. But if someone who stops and like pets the dog, they're probably a good father, so it starts from, it starts from the top, I guess. It starts with that experience of like, hey, let's just do something that feels right. And it helps us identify the right people who work here too. Sometimes there's people who don't have it naturally. They don't naturally want to be generous. They don't naturally want to go the extra mile. And it's really easy to identify those people as a not good fit when they're surrounded by, 300 people who live and breathe that every single day. So once you have that infrastructure set up in your culture, then it trickles down to the customer, and then it keeps going back and back and back. Also, it helps when there's a super asshole customer and people are like, this is out of the norm. Normally our customers love us. Like, what is going on with this guy? It's obvious that it's not a good fit. We gently say like, hey, maybe we're not a good fit for you. I want you to be successful, whether it's with us or with somebody else. Here's a refund. Like, we wish you the best. Here's a referral. Like, please go be happy somewhere. I just want happiness for you. It's obviously not with us.
And when that type of thing happens, how long does it take for you to make that call? And then how do you actually do that?
Usually it ends up at my desk. I'm like chief of customer support. I always try and take the super nasty ones. Honestly, it doesn't happen that often, because if you deliver a really good product and you exceed expectations, then you're not dealing with a bunch of chaotic customer support stuff. How do we solve it? We go the extra mile. Like, usually our goal is one-touch resolution. So if someone writes in, it's like, hey, dude, my parts were all bent up. It looks like the FedEx guy like kicked this down the alley. Our first response is, you have a full refund and new parts are getting overnighted. You'll have them tomorrow. Like, we're so sorry. We want to make it right. And then, it's expensive, but we learn from it. We learn, hey, did our packaging fail? Whatever. There's always a lesson in there. And then the customer is usually like ready for battle, because they're used to dealing with these other companies that
people that are fighting back. Yeah.
And as soon as we don't fight, they're like, oh shit, okay, so sorry. And then they're totally chill. If we do that and then they're still mad, it's like, okay, cool. What else can we do? Like, the phrase that you hear a lot from us is, how can we make it right? We want to make it right. Sometimes right isn't a refund. Sometimes right isn't parts. Sometimes they want to talk to me. Sometimes they want a public apology. I have no idea. But it's like, what do these people want to make it right? We will do that. If we try and we still can't make it right, then it's just the blunt conversation of like, hey man, you don't like us.
And that's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. We're not a fit for everybody. And that's the whole thing with SendCutSend. We're a little weird. If you're really experienced in sheet metal or CNC machining, we can do 80% of it. But if you have been doing this for 20 years or whatever, and you're like, hey, how come you can't do this super common thing in the industry? We're like, well, because we don't. We are In-N-Out Burger. Small menu, but it's super good, super fast.
You know what you're getting
priced.
when you show up.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, does In-N-Out have a fryer where they could make a breaded chicken sandwich or something? Sure. But they're not going to, because it's not in their model. So we have to explain like, hey, we're not a good fit for everybody, but for a lot of people we are. Some people accept that and some people don't.
Yeah, the best form of capitalism is basically you're trying to create as much goodwill as with the most number of people, and then you just have a consistent, every single time they interact with you, they love it and they want to come back. And also the way that this works is like if they get their part a day faster or something, maybe that just speeds up their business just ever so slightly, which allows them to scale faster, which then allows them to send you more orders.
Yeah, we try and be like the guy next door that if you could pay in beer, you would. I've done that. I've brought a 6-pack to a place and been like, for the love of God, can you help me make this?
Okay, you have to explain that. What how many times have you done that? Brought a pack of beer to some...
Oh, dozens.
Really?
You have to know their vice. So it's like which kind of beer, or do they prefer bourbon or whiskey
Being
or
thoughtful
vodka?
about it, yeah.
Yeah, very, very thoughtful. Zin, whatever. And then the same thing happens to us. A neighbor will come over and, we've got so many bottles of tequila for lending out a forklift. That's how the economy works, and it's neighbors and machining and stuff like that. So we're like, okay, how can we take that concept and scale it to the internet? And so it's just going the extra mile. It's caring about their project. We have more investment in customer support and DFM engineers than anybody. And the reason why we're overstaffed is so that people can like show true interest in the project that these people are building and help them carry it over the finish line. Again, whether we're the right fit or not. In the super, super early days, we had a customer who got us confused with like a guitar company. And they were like, hey, I need to find this, this owner's manual for this guitar pedal thing. And we're like, hey, that's not really us, but we looked for it and we found it and here's the PDF. And they're like, oh my God, that guy ended up coming back and ordering a bunch of pick guards for guitars or whatever. But you can't do that if you're trying to slam through and hit metrics. So the other thing that we do with customer support is we don't really hire customer support agents. We hire enthusiasts and makers and designers. And so everyone on our team is a customer. Actually, we do that everywhere besides customer service too. It's like we try and hire our customers, people who just get it. And then that way, when they're talking to a customer, they're like, oh man, I've been there. I've done that. Here's how I would do it. Here's how I would approach it. Especially with automotive projects, we have a lot of guys who are super into cars. And if you're making like a battery box out of sheet metal, oftentimes when we go and we're like, hey, how come this ticket had like 85 responses? How come it took 21 days to solve this ticket? It was solved the first shot, but then they were talking about cars for like a month and a half, talking about like which fuel injection system to use or whatever. So I love having that luxury. And, again, CFO is going to be like, you're way overstaffed in customer support. Are we though?
I don't even know. Like, my bet is when you do hire a CFO, it's going to be someone that's like very culturally aligned.
I want to see how long we can go without having one. That's my goal.
Why?
We've had a couple, and they're great people, just not the right fit at the right time. I think when you're publicly traded, obviously you have to have a CFO and governance and whatever. But when you're growing and you're just trying to build a really good product, they're focused on that spreadsheet. They're focused on running the business from a spreadsheet. And they're the ones to say like, how come you spent $42,000 in candy last month? I'm like, because it fucking feels good, and all the chocolate spoiled because we shipped it to Florida and it all melted. So we had to reorder, So CFOs don't get it because especially a lot of CFOs haven't run a lemonade stand. They weren't hustling. They had they went to a good college. They got some job as an analyst at McKinsey or something like that. And then they just were crowned CFO. I want a CFO who's like, down and dirty and seen some shit. And
excited to walk the floor.
Yeah, exactly. Walk the floor, figure out what's going on. But those are pretty rare people. So right now we can operate without a CFO because the whole leadership team is the CFO.
Yeah.
I contribute my gym math and instinct and forecasting abilities. Our VP of operations contributes like what our capacity is. Our controller is looking at like tax burdens and all this other stuff. So combined, we're like Captain Planet. You're too young for Captain Planet, probably. Voltron, you're way too young for that too. Anyway, together we're like pretty kick-ass machine.
On the like 85 tickets for some guy building a car, it kind of reminds me of, I think it's Tony Hsieh from Zappos, and he, their entire tagline for Zappos while they were building it was they want to like deliver happiness. And there was this moment where I believe that he was in Vegas and it was like 11 p.m. at night, and he was, he tried to build a staff of people that are like support people and customer service people that would just solve people's problems, and whatever the problem was. And just off the cuff, they decided to, at like 11 p.m., they were trying to order a pizza and they couldn't find anywhere in Las Vegas that had a pizza at 11 p.m. And so they're like, fuck it. Let's just try calling the support number and see what happens. They didn't tell them who they were or anything. They just called the customer support of Zappos and were like, I need a pizza. And the guy was like, well, we don't really do pizza. But then he like found a pizza place and like helped them order the pizza.
Yeah, no, I think if everyone took that approach, the world would be a better place. However, you can't take that approach when you have VCs breathing down your neck for growth and margin and, just money at all costs. How can I pretty you up so I can flip you onto the next greater fool? You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to do all these like over the top cool gestures that are going to build a generational company because you're so worried about making the next quarter. So we have that luxury. I think more people should be exposed to that type of building a business where they can have the luxury of doing what's right versus what helps the bottom line. Because the bottom line will come. You just have to be patient.
When you're thinking about the whole legacy of the company and your legacy, and you're thinking about this much more long-term perspective of 25, 50 years, and you're getting a customer that is super happy today that's going to be ordering for the next 50 years, how are you deciding to make decisions when with that understanding in mind? Like short-term profitability of a single order is not necessarily as important as like the happiness of a customer.
Yeah.
And how do you think about that?
I mean, obviously, I have no background in finance.
You seem to be doing all right.
I don't have an MBA or whatever. And I think that's a huge gift because I run the company as a company that I would want to interact with. So my legacy is, how can I win a customer over now and then have them as a lifetime customer? And that brings a lot of challenges. It's not just like speed and price and quality. It's also expansion. It's growth with that customer. So my software company prior to this was B2B SaaS. So hell yeah.
You made the right pivot.
That was back when it was cool. And so we had the concept of churn. Churn was terrifying to us because we put all this effort into having a customer and then they'd leave and we're like, oh no, our subscription count went down. When I started this business, I was like, oh dude, we don't have a concept of churn. Once people use us, they keep using us over and over again. Now, they may use us less frequently if they don't have a project or something like that. But typically, if we win them over, we could win them over for the lifetime. We found out that that's not true in all cases. Sometimes our customers outgrow us, and it's really, really cool. It's like a proud, bittersweet moment. You're like really excited to see that they're not going to use you anymore because they bought their own equipment, or they're starting their own manufacturing line. And we've advised on, hey, here's equipment to buy. Here's how you want to set up your line. Here's where to procure your nitrogen. Yeah, I want people to win.
Yeah.
But I was like, okay, I can't do that for everyone. What if all of our customers outgrow us? Then I'm screwed, right? So how can I grow with them? So speaking of like legacy or whatever, I want someone to be able to start at a kitchen table with an idea. We do a quantity of 1, and then they're like, hey, I made some iterations, quantity of 10, quantity of 100,000, whatever. They're like, hey, I'm starting to distribute into other countries. Can you help with that? I'm like, okay, let me figure it out. Hey,
I've done that before, but
my quantities are massive. Laser cutting doesn't make it sense anymore. How can you help us with stamping? Can you help us with casting? Can you help us with injection molding? I'm like, I don't know. That's where I want to go with legacy. Because if I can truly have a lifetime customer, like someone who discovers us from First Robotics or Vex Robotics when they're 16, and then when they're 45,
they're still using SendCutSend.
They're still using SendCutSend, because I know guys that have done that with McMaster. I know guys that have used McMaster for 40 years. I would love to be in that same category.
I would also like to spend a moment. You started off with just some laser machines, and now you are doing all sorts of stuff. I think, how many different machines do you have right now?
I don't know. A lot, like different processes or total machines in the network. I have no idea. Because we have a lot, all the CNC machines that's the fastest growing part of the business right now. So we do laser cutting, water jet cutting. We have CO2 lasers for plastics. We have CNC routers for like carbon fiber and phenolic materials. We have CNC lathes and 3-axis machines and 5-axis machines and robotics. And we have powder coating and hardware insertion machines and kitting systems and pick-to-light. And I don't know. We have a lot. We have a lot going on, and it all comes from customer demand. We add materials because people ask for it, and we can't add everything because, again, we still try and be like in and out and have a menu that is manageable. But as we grow, it's like not only are customers asking for it, but I'm my own customer too. So I often have a project where I'm like, oh man, my welding bottle is out of gas again. I don't want to weld this. I haven't welded in 6 months, so I'm shaky. I'm not good. I wish that I could just have this welded up. So it's like, okay, maybe we get into welding. Maybe 3D printing is not quite working for this application, and injection molding would be way better. If I personally need it, or my
There's
CTO,
probably other people that need it.
Exactly. So that's how we explore stuff. That's how I'm going to stay busy for the next.
And I'd be curious, like on the expansion side, when you're thinking about entering a new market, like buying a bunch of CNC machines or something like that, you have a certain standard of quality of the customer experience that you have with the things that you currently sell. And I imagine that day one, right as soon as you're turning it on, you want that same standard of quality.
Yeah, that's why we don't tell anybody.
So how do you once you decide to go into some new business line, how do you basically make sure that first interaction with the customer when they're ordering something is going to be the same standard? Spinning that up.
You don't tell anybody.
Don't tell anyone.
So
what do you mean?
We call it the gaslight launch, where we just gaslight people into believing that it's always been there. By the time they discover it, they're like, oh my God, I didn't know that you guys had carbon fiber. And we're like, yeah, dude, where have you been?
We're doing it.
It's been there for a long time. Jeez. Even though maybe we just launched it, but we don't tell anyone because we want to get really damn good at it before we do anything. So we just started a podcast, and to interview cool customers and staff and stuff, and just like a little behind the scenes. So if we don't have cool lighting or anything, our podcast, it's getting better though.
You got to start somewhere. You got to start by doing the first one.
That's the thing. You just have to do it. So the first 3 episodes we threw away. The next 5 episodes, no one has seen because we're not telling anybody about it because I'm not proud of it yet. Once we become we're proud and we start to talk about it and advertise it, it'll be episode 30. And they'll be like, oh my God, I didn't know you had a podcast. I'm like, where have you been, man? Jeez. So same thing like with CNC, with new materials, with new capabilities, we run it secret menu.
You have an entire secret menu of things that you can do but don't tell anyone about?
Yes. It's a hell of a menu. And we have select customers that are vocal, both positive and negative. We keep them into a couple different buckets. So if you're watching this and you get asked to test secret menu stuff, you're in one of the buckets. You're either in there because we love your positive feedback, or you're in there because we love your negative feedback.
Just love your feedback.
Yeah. So we let them test it. We refine. Years ago, I was like, I think I want to start a restaurant. And I started researching how to start a restaurant and everything. And one of the big takeaways was you don't just say grand opening. You open and you invite like a couple buddies and then their families and then a few people off the street. And so you have this like slow launch that happens. And by the time there's a grand opening sign out there, your waitresses are trained, your chefs know, what rush looks
Everyone
like.
knows the process.
So that's the same thing we do here.
How long does something typically stay on the secret menu before it's wide openly available?
It depends.
Because I imagine for every single one, you have to basically get it to that point where you're proud of it.
Yep. Yeah. You have to work out all the bugs. So yeah, by the time the public sees anything, it's probably at version 4 or 5. If it's a material, it could be 4 or 5 weeks. If it's something like CNC, it could be 4 or 5 months. There are projects that are coming that have been in the works for 2 years. And we've started up, shut it down. Started up, shut it down. Sometimes we'll shut it down because the technology is not there. We wait a year and we're like, oh my God, we just saw this thing.
It works.
Yeah, because someone was having the same problem that we were having. They figured it out and we're like, oh shit, let's blow the dust off of this, add this new piece of tech and see if we can make it happen. So that's always super fun. But what I don't like to do is, tease and then not have anything to show.
Yeah, you want to be able to deliver what you are saying that you can deliver.
Yep.
Yeah. For the factory itself, you're working on a whole bunch of different stuff now. And you're walking around your own factory to see that everything is, even as you were walking through earlier, you were picking up little things off the floor and you want it to be clean and put together. I think the best way to learn is you just go see something in action that's working. And then you get enough of the data points where you're able to say, I like, this works really well. I also don't really like, I've seen in 2 or 3 factories and now I know that like one thing works really well. Another thing is not so great. And you're taking the best parts to incorporate in your own business.
Yeah.
What have you done there?
Yeah. Everything. So being in Reno, we're not exposed to a lot of factories. There's a lot of warehousing here. However, that's really cool for automation. You can see like pick robots. We've toured an Amazon fulfillment center before. Aero Electronics is down the street. We toured that facility, which is amazing. The issue with us is we're so high mix. There's nothing really like it. We often see a lot of solutions that are great if we made, 10 SKUs or even 100 SKUs. But because we make thousands of SKU listings per day, it's really challenging. My favorite thing to do though is you don't tour. If you're a sheet metal manufacturer, you don't tour other sheet metal manufacturers. It doesn't matter. Go tour something that's super weird. Go tour like food processing or like flour distribution, cold chain stuff. You'll always pick up something that you could apply to your industry. And then now that's secret sauce. So if you're looking at what's been done, like if you go to trade shows, like FabTech is a huge trade show in the fabrication industry. You go there and you learn more about like your own industry and it's kind of like preaching to the choir. But if you go to like a cosmetics trade show, it's wild. You're going to see like weird marketing techniques that you've never seen. You're going to hear about like packaging equipment that you didn't know existed. Like our packaging equipment, it's for food. Like it's to keep like steaks fresh. So the weirder industry that you can explore and borrow from, like that's how you get innovation in your own industry.
Yeah, I know when we were talking yesterday, you said that the 2 people that you have like learned a lot from, and I think there's probably others, but it's like Les Schwab and Sam Walton. And Sam Walton would, whenever he would go to, I think he took on his family on a lot of trips.
Yeah.
And almost every single day that they were out on a trip, he would be basically just touring the different like retail locations and like supermarkets and all these different things. Yep. And his kids knew that he would just, go to some supermarket in like Argentina and then go lay on the floor to see how, wide the aisles were and then like go talk with the staff and ask about, all these different things. How have you kind of chosen your role models and what have you like learned from them?
I think the reason I like Sam Walton and Les Schwab especially is because their reading level or their writing level is right at my reading level, like 5th grade. They use vocabulary that I'm familiar with. You know, I grew up in rural Nevada. I didn't go to school, or well, I went to high school, but I did like 6 weeks at UNR. On X, there's a lot of people, what they call them word cells or something. They're using crazy terminology to explain something that's like really freaking basic. I think Sam Walton, Les Schwab were confident enough in their abilities of just doing it like a blue collar method and just making shit work. They didn't have to use crazy ass vocabulary or try and impress VCs with, or I can't even think of any words to use an example.
Yeah. I feel the same way, by the way.
It's basic. Do the basics really, really well. Maybe you're not going to impress people at a high society party, or, God forbid, I go to Silicon Valley to some, cocktail party, because I'm going to be wearing jeans and my flannel or whatever. But I have a good business and I have good customers. And I think those guys knew it too. They took good care of their employees. They weren't there for an exit. They were there for a legacy. They were there to make America better. They were there to make sure that their employees could buy homes and cars and have babies. And that's exactly what I'm doing. And I'm like, dude, do I need to write a book or something so that people will respect my stupid approach? Because they're like, Sam Walton is doing, all kinds of awesome stuff, and he wrote a book, and of course
he wrote the book at the end of his life,
and he did an incredible job. So I'm like, fuck, I guess I got to just wait until I'm dead, and then people will be like, oh, dude, the Jim Belosic method like actually works.
There might have been some special sauce there.
Yeah, so I'll just wait until I'm dead, and then maybe they'll like teach this in business school. I don't know. It just feels like I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah. So when you're thinking about, there's things that you can kind of control inside of the four walls of your warehouse or your factory. But especially with, customers, it's you're relying on a lot of other people's supply chains to make everything work. And, I know, and again, with Sam Walton, like he would talk with the supermarket people, the people that were in charge of his stores and other people's stores. But then he would also, to get like the best source of real-time information on a whole bunch of different stores at once, he would basically go to some distribution center where they have a whole bunch of different trucks going to a whole bunch of different stores at once. And then he would just bring a bag of donuts or like a box of donuts, I believe at like 5 a.m. before everyone shipped out. And he would just talk with these guys. They were truck drivers, and he'd be able to get like a pulse on, 15 stores at once. How have you kind of thought about what you can control? And then for the things that you can't control, how do you make that work?
Yeah, I kind of lit up when you said, oh, you focus on stuff that you can control. That's 1,000,000% our motto. It's focus on our constraints. Our constraints are what we can control. If it's outside of our control, it's still our problem. And we can mitigate like catastrophes a little bit by having, backup vendors or redundancy or whatever. But really our focus needs to be on what do we do best? And we don't spend any time thinking about, oh, what could have been, or, we woulda, shoulda, coulda. I often say, I don't have a time machine. I don't have a time machine. Yeah, that went sideways. That was super screwed up. But I can't go back in time. So what should we do moving forward? Our constraints, one of the things that we talk about is it our problem or their problem? Meaning our customers. And, we can't do a certain type of bending geometry or whatever. Is it their problem that we can't do that? No, it's our problem. So we always have to look inward and like challenge ourselves to be better. Like we'll add tooling, we'll add process, we'll add technique in order to make sure that it's not their problem. It's our problem. We'll solve it. When it comes to things outside of our control, so we look at weather. We're in Northern Nevada. We're 30 minutes from Lake Tahoe. Winter weather is a real thing. First couple of years, it bit us in the ass. So that was actually a big reason that we expanded, to different facilities across the country so that we can.
And you have one in Kentucky and Texas now.
Yeah, one in Paris, Kentucky, and one in Arlington, Texas. And then we have a fourth facility that secret menu right now. No one really knows about it.
Is that your like lab, the special stuff?
No, it'll be a full facility. Yeah, it's just not online yet. So anyway, we're trying to expand so that we have better control on the things that are outside of our control. Weather, lead times from raw material vendors. Dude, Memphis got hit with an ice storm or something like that a couple of years ago, and that's like the FedEx hub. And if you have all your eggs in the FedEx basket and Memphis goes down, like, you are screwed for weeks. So that ice storm shut down the hub, so they started putting stuff on intermodal rail, and then all the rail got like backlogged and trucks were lost. And anyway, it was all kinds of issues. So we can't control everything outside of our control, but we can have backups on backups on backups. We can have redundancy. So yes, we ship UPS, we'll ship DHL, we'll ship, whatever we can in order to mitigate carrier issues, risks, weather issues, suppliers. For every material that we have at least 3 suppliers. We always have favorites, based on price or lead time or whatever, but shit happens, during COVID, like, they'd be like, we're shut down. All of our guys are sick for 10 days. It's like, well, I can't allow you to shut me down. So it's expensive. It's time consuming. But once you start to get used to it, it's a huge advantage.
You get a little better. You build a muscle of like working on the fly and figuring shit out.
Yeah.
Yeah. For the amount of like inventory that you have, I think you talked about basically having like 7 days of metal pretty much in the factory at any given time. How are you thinking about basically guaranteeing that, assuming not everything goes right, you can still deliver on time and like all that sort of thing? How much inventory do you want?
Well, this is actually where a CFO would really help, because I learned that having millions of dollars of inventory on the floor impacts cash. Didn't really know that. I was like, how come we have no cash?
What is a capital cycle?
Yeah, I was like, this is weird. Also, I learned a lot about like net terms.
Yeah.
I was like, we're making all kinds of money, but then it doesn't come in for a little while. I was like, oh shit, we have no cash. So anyway, we're trying to be smarter about how much inventory we carry. If it's a long lead time material, we may have to carry a year's supply. Some of our non-metals are kind of exotic, and it might take us 3 months to get a supply.
So you got to be basically assume for the worst. You need to make sure that you have that on hand.
Plus a spike. That's the other issue. We're kind of like a contract manufacturer. We're kind of a job shop, but on steroids. A contract manufacturer is usually going to say like, hey, I need 1 million units over the next 12 months, deliver me, 100,000 a month or whatever. We have no idea what's going to happen at any given moment. So if you have this material that's 3-month lead time, you're like, okay, I need to carry enough for 3 months plus 3 months to replenish. But then what if an aerospace company comes to you and is like, hey, I need 10,000 units of that long lead time.
Can you do it?
Yeah. So you have to have surge capacity too, which sucks for cash. But actually, not having a CFO has allowed us to do that, because I'm like, I just don't want to run out. Like that's the number one order that we give to our procurement staff and our supply chain staff. Don't run out. Just stop running out, for the love of God. It's so expensive to run out. There's opportunity cost. You have to make it right. So maybe you have to overnight a bunch of shit. You're ordering raw material from McMaster, which is wildly expensive. So just don't run out. And that's something that when you're running the business on a spreadsheet, it's really hard.
You don't see the same. Yeah.
So the other thing that we do is, like you said earlier, just have a good relationship with your vendors. Our building next door, or our old building, not this building. Anyway, we outgrew our building, and the building next door came available. And we're like, okay, we're going to move there. We put up our existing building for sale, and we got a bunch of offers. It was a very popular piece of real estate, and we ended up selling it for a deal to one of our vendors. And it's Coast Aluminum. They're right next door, and they're amazing. And I was like, I would rather our vendor be right next door than make a little extra money on some dude who's not going to be a cool neighbor. So yeah, the fact that we can walk over with beer and get him to hop in the forklift and deliver some metal, in an emergency case is super, super awesome. I wish we could scale that. I mean, we're trying to, we're trying to be more vertically integrated and control a little bit more of our supply chain. I was talking to somebody the other day. I was like, could we own the mill where the aluminum is melted down? Or actually, where does that come from? Well, it's bauxite, which is mined. I'm like, well, can we get a mine? And I'm like, wait, who actually makes money in all of this? I think it's the shipping guys.
The shipping guys.
It's always like, if you go to the root cause analysis, it's usually like shipping. Everything that you do has to be shipped. So anyway, maybe we need like an ocean transit company, and then a bauxite mine, and then a refinery, and then we can be truly vertically integrated.
With scale, you can kind of make that make sense on a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah. I think our first step is, I'm not really worried about our supply chain. We deal in commodities, and if we can't source it, there's a lot of other guys that can. If our stuff is really exotic, then it's hard, and you'd want to control the supply chain more. Yeah. But at least for where we're at now, we're okay working with really, really good vendors. But at some point, yeah, how do we own the metal, from the mill? How do we own the transport that it's going on? Can I have a railroad line that delivers our coils? That's how I'm thinking. I don't know if I'll ever get there.
Do you think of is John D. Rockefeller kind of in the back of your mind at any time?
Yeah, I've never read his stuff or anything, but
because he basically he kind of thought through, I think, his entire business in figuring out how could you, like, there was I think at one point he bought an entire forest to basically create barrels so that he could transport oil easier. Yes. And it was just like fully vertically integrating his entire supply chain.
I think that's always been my challenge, from my first business, when I was 15, mowing lawns. I was like, man, I want to get every house on this street. And I should have thought bigger, I should have thought like, I want to get this entire neighborhood and then the adjoining neighborhood, and then I'll be able to hire a driver so I can go to other neighborhoods or whatever. But I was like, oh, I'm going to get my neighbor, then I'm going to get the street, and then maybe I'll get the block or whatever. That thought process has followed me through all my companies. And just now I'm like, oh, wait, you have to think so much bigger so that you can land somewhere in the middle. Brian Wolf, our VP of operations, he always says, aim for perfection and you'll achieve excellence. And so, yeah, if I think about owning a bauxite mine, maybe we'll end up acquiring one of our service centers or something like that. So I'm not going to have a mine or a
in your mind,
but it'd be cool.
In your mind, like throughout the journey building SendCutSend, how has, I wouldn't necessarily even say the ambition level, but basically the way that you think about the business, how has that evolved over time? Even now that you're thinking about it today, you're thinking about maybe we have to buy a mine, maybe we have to buy a railroad, all sorts of stuff to make things work. How has that evolved?
I think a lot about what can Jim do? What can only I do? And at the beginning, like I said, shipping with Jim, I can ship, I can drive a forklift. I think I'm still forklift certified. I can push a broom, I can load machines, I can do some stuff, but so can other people. And so I find myself focusing on stuff that only I can do. I'm going on podcasts to be the face of the company. I'm the one who has to have these relationships with key customers. I'm the one who has to negotiate with key vendors. I'm the one who solely has to control vision and expansion and be the number one cheerleader. So yeah, every once in a while I'm like, God, I really wish I could just go run a machine. I really wish I could just be on the forklift all day. It's so fun.
That's your happy place.
Yeah. But I can't. I have to do gym stuff. So, looking forward, it's all in my mind. I have a great leadership team. We have great staff that is there, and we work together and come up with like ideas for the future. But when it comes down to it, it's my responsibility. So it's hard shifting from, oh man, I really want to, go hang out with the guys and sharpen tools or something like that. but I got to go be in a conference room and talk to some dude on Zoom for 2 hours. It's not super great, but it's a good use of my time because it pushes us forward. And I think only a founder can do that. You know, if I brought in a CEO from somewhere else, they're just not going to have it.
No, I think you kind of got to lead with, you know, the business that you want to build. And also I imagine that you didn't start out always wanting to be on the forklift. Like at the very beginning, before you even tried the forklift for the first time, you didn't know that you enjoyed that. But then also over time, as you're growing and making a bigger company, there's other things that are probably really enjoyable that you just wouldn't like. You get a little bit of the fun.
Yeah. I get to do like intangible things more than anybody else. I get to experiment more. I get to throw a bunch of stuff away. I get to try things and, you know, throw shit at the wall and not all of it sticks. And no one's breathing down my neck about it. Like, Jim, you just burned up 6 weeks of time, or you just lit $100,000 on fire. It was my decision.
And it was also your money. And you like it. That's the great thing about like really owning the company is that if you're spending $1, it's your dollar.
Yes.
It's not someone else's dollar. And so if you spend it in a way that other people are like, that doesn't make sense. It's like, it made sense to me.
Yeah. I still get yelled at. Our president, who's my lovely wife, she gets a little upset at me when I light too much of our own cash on fire, but it's fun. It keeps me coming back. I am notorious for starting projects and then giving up halfway through. So I'm a car guy, and I'm always like restoring a car, or building a car, or doing something like that. Facebook Marketplace is my nemesis because I'll tear the engine out of something and then I'm waiting for parts. So I'm on Facebook Marketplace. I'm like, oh, there's a Buick Grand National for sale. You know, let me check that out. And then I'm selling the other project for parts. You know, this business is a continual project. It's never finished. And I've sold cars as soon as I'm done building them because I like the build.
Yeah.
And as soon as it runs and drives, I'm like, boring, lame, don't give a shit.
You didn't enjoy it. You wanted to make the thing.
I like the project. Yeah. And manufacturing is infinite, you know, challenges and weird stuff that you can always improve upon. This place will never, ever, ever be perfect. We'll never be done. We'll never have enough capacity. We can never offer enough materials and enough processes or whatever. So I'm excited that this can keep me busy for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I want to spend a little bit of time. You know, in the very beginning, you took a huge, I think what most people would consider a huge risk. I think people generally misunderstand risk. But you took a big risk by buying that first laser. How do you think about what risks make sense? What is risk in your mind? And then what is something that most people would perceive as risk, but in your mind is the most obvious thing in the world?
If you take a quantity of risk, it'll be seen differently by 10 different people. If you tell 10 different people, rate how much risk this is, you'll get 10 different answers. I think the best founders and entrepreneurs are naturally risk tolerant. So my concept of risk is wildly different than my wife's. I bought an old car and it doesn't have seatbelts. And oh my God, she does not want to ride in that thing. And the whole way we're riding home, she's like, where's the seatbelts? And I'm like, dude, they did this in 1964. They lived. My dad drove a car like this and he's alive. So I'm totally comfortable with that risk. So when it comes to business, I am often told that I'm taking risks and I don't see it that way. I'm just like, no, this is what it's going to take to move forward.
What have been those biggest moments?
It's like, if you build it, they will come. You know, it comes with capacity. So the CNC endeavor is one of our bigger investments. And we have never done CNC machining. And we have no clients that have, had CNC machining needs. But I was like, the market's there. I need it, personally as a customer. I've heard some grumblings from customers that it would be nice if SendCutSend could offer that. But when I ran the math, I was like, oh, to do it right and to do it at SendCutSend scale, you have to go all the way in. You're jumping in with both feet. So it's calculated risk. I always know what my safety net is. And worst case scenario, I was like, the banks know where these machines are. They can come and get them. Yes, I will lose some money, but I'm not going to like go to jail. I'm not going to lose my home or anything like that. You know, it's if everything went completely sideways, what would the worst case outcome be? And then I plan against that. So if the worst case outcome is like, I'm going to jail,
you're probably not going to take that
I
risk.
usually avoid that. Although my kids are older now. So, you know,
so maybe a little bit more risk on. We haven't actually seen what Jim is capable of yet.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's coming. I've avoided like a private pilot's license forever because I had kids, but my daughter's going to be 19 and my boy is going to be 16. So whatever, they knew their dad for long enough. Like I could
they have some good memories. They you know, at least he went out, you know, flying the
dude,
company
go out
plane
on top, man. You know, so anyway, we avoid jail time in our risk calculations. I also avoid, on a serious note, I avoid like anything that's going to result in layoffs or affecting my staff's like home life.
You're thinking about their lives. Yeah.
Yes. I have 350 families that I take care of. It's not staff. It's not a dude. It's the dude and his wife, or the wife and her dude, or whatever, and their kids and everything. So I have to be very cautious that I can't overhire. Oftentimes we are running a lot of overtime. Again, CFOs do not like overtime. I do, because I'd rather pay more on the paycheck than have to lay off 10 people because I made a bad bet.
Have you had any situations where you were operating on a slightly different philosophy and you did have to make one of those really tough decisions at any point in the journey, or have you been relatively able to predict?
I was ready to go down with ship with COVID. I remember, what was that, March of 2020 or whatever?
Yeah, it was March
whatever.
2020.
That whole time sucked. It was like lockdown. I was driving to work. There was no cars on the street. And we got to work and we all went outside. We're like, we don't know what the hell's going on. We're not supposed to touch each other or whatever. And I said, we have enough money where we can like sweep and paint and organize and stuff for about 6 weeks. And I was like, I'm going to burn all that money making sure that these guys are paid, because they had mortgages and stuff. I was like, let's keep going, you know, until we're completely done. Turns out, you know, we were lucky. A bunch of ventilators needed to be made, and then battery packs for the ventilators and everything. So we actually made more parts during COVID than we ever had.
So it turned from like a very, very difficult time on the other side of that 6-week period.
Yeah.
You actually had a lot of business and were able to keep on going.
Yeah. But I was prepared to do everything I could to make sure that payroll was met.
Was that the time where you were like the most afraid?
Yeah. Unknowns to me, they don't happen very often because I run many, many scenarios. That was a very unknown, like black swan event.
Yeah.
I had no idea what the possible outcome was. So it was great that we were able to benefit. But I didn't have a whole lot of options, you know, after that money ran out. After we paid a couple payrolls, I was like, I don't know what to do, man. So yeah, having options, being creative, it allows us to handle worst case scenarios. Whenever I'm doing modeling or forecasting, we always have three. There's a high, a medium, and a low. The low is the worst case scenario. Like what's our bare minimum so that we can keep going? And then medium is like, what do we think is going to happen? And then high is, you know, what if we beat? You never plan on the high. You don't start buying equipment based on the high. You buy equipment based on the low, you know, or somewhere between the low and the medium.
Worst case sort of situation.
You hire based on the low.
If you bet on the best golden, you know, rainbows scenario, it's not going to work out every time, and bad things happen if it doesn't work.
And oh my God, I see so many like pitches. You know, they're like, hey man, I'm raising. Can you look at this pitch deck? I was like, where did you get your math from? And they're like, oh, it's all going to be perfect and we're going to have this much ramp. And they're like, no, you got to plan for the shit. If you can make the model work with this shitty scenario where you have a quarter of the customers that you thought and your machines break 50 times more than you expect, and your maintenance is 100 times the cost. If you can make the numbers work then by all means go for it. But so often people don't account for the real world. They don't account for an ice storm in Memphis. They don't account for
COVID.
Lasers make thermite. Like we make thermite all day long. We have aluminum oxide and iron oxide that are mixing together. So lasers catch on fire. I was like, the salesman doesn't tell you that. When you're running a bunch of them 24/7, you start to learn like, oh, there's these issues that happen. So you get good. You just have to survive. If you survive long enough, eventually they write a book about you.
I think on the surviving point, that's pretty key as well. You've talked about in like other interviews that you've done, you've talked about growing a little bit slower than maybe you would like. And I think that's probably pretty intentional, because you might be able to make take a bigger risk today. But if that's like an actual risk where the company doesn't work, if that thing goes, to shit, that's maybe not a risk that you want to take. And so from like a growth perspective, would have been like the mental models for you on deciding to grow a little bit slower and more methodically so that you know that there is going to be customers there, or the 25% is okay, know? Have there been like that or no?
No, I can't say like I chose to grow slowly.
Yeah.
I was constrained.
Yeah.
I was constrained on money. When you're trying to self-fund, you can only grow so fast. But thank God, 7 years ago, you give me $100 million to create SendCutSend. No, we'd be 100% dead in the water. I would have bought the wrong equipment. I would have hired the wrong people. I would have done everything wrong because money would not be a constraint. So I would be very risk tolerant with money. Because money is a constraint, you have to move a little slower. And I'm glad.
But it's much more enduring. Like this is one of those things where you're like building a very enduring business that's going to be there. It's going to continue serving customers.
Yeah, but that's not how VC works. They need a return very, very quickly, so that they can pay off their LPs or GP. I don't know how that works. Anyway, they got guys breathing down their neck to get a return. So growth at all costs, as fast as possible, get that valuation, get new money in, punch out, whatever. We've always thought about it as, what's the right decision at the right time so that we don't burn the house down, but at the same time we're growing to meet demand. We throttle our marketing all the time because if we marketed at the percent of investment that every other company does, I think the demand would be too great, and then we'd piss off a bunch of people. I don't have the capacity for it. This is a very capital intensive business. Just a term
you talked about yesterday. Your when you were initially talking with your wife about it, you'd been working in software for a very long time. And as a joke, you're like, yeah, this is a capital intensive business, not a capital light business.
Yeah, it was a term that I had been told. I was like, oh, it's capital intensive. Yeah, it just costs a shit ton of money. Also, I hate when people say capital. It's just money. Do you need money or not? Jesus. It's because you have all these fixed assets. You have equipment that may have a 10-year lifespan or longer. And it's expensive to get it going. I mean, think about starting a steel mill, and it's like damn near impossible now. It takes so much money and investors are not patient. That's why it takes government level investment in order to get these huge things off the ground, because you have to be comfortable not seeing a return either ever or maybe after 50 years or something like that. So I'm trying to run this company so that, there'll be a return. But I'm the one looking for the return. And I'm very patient because I enjoy this. I'm having a good time.
So you've been very methodical about how you're building this business, and you have a semi-different management style than most people do. And I think you're trying to find employees and like partners that are very aligned with that philosophy. How do you go about finding really fantastic talent?
Would I want to have a beer with them? Also, hire customers. I'm a huge fan of diversity. Like we were talking about earlier, you don't tour sheet metal shops. You tour a dog food factory or a place where they're making nail polish or something, and you try and take things from other industries and apply them to your own. So I'm not hiring sheet metal guys. I'm not hiring a lot of CNC machinists. I'm hiring people that are problem solvers, people that come from, an array of different backgrounds, and it works. We're a pirate ship. I'm the captain of a pirate ship, but we're all wildly different in backgrounds, but together it's like we have all these skills. If you hire a bunch of sheet metals guys, they're going to try and solve sheet metal problems using sheet metal tools. But if you have, an ex rocket scientist and then a biologist and a psychologist or whatever, you come up with like novel solutions, stuff that's never happened. So, we hire based on what you've done.
Like proof of work.
Yeah. I just told my daughter the other day, she was worried about her GPA. I was like, I have never looked at someone's GPA when I've hired them. But I will look at what you've done. And even our software engineers, Cody Callahan, I hired him at a job fair at the university. Didn't even care what classes he was taking or whatever, because he pulled out his iPhone and he was like, check out this app that I built. And I was like, this is amazing. Come work for us. That was a decade ago.
So you're looking for like those experimentalists that are actually getting their hands dirty with whatever they are passionate about.
And people that are chasing like tangible things, like projects that you can show off versus like awards and credentials. There's nothing worse than seeing on someone's resume, they have like all these 3-letter terms. I don't even know what the hell they are.
You're looking for the people with the inner scorecard.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you proud that you accomplished? What stuff have you done that shows that you've tried and you failed, and you tried again and you got it to work? Another one of our engineers, he worked at a factory that was making the breakfast sandwiches for Starbucks. And his job was to like monitor if the bacon was cooked accurately or not. And he was like, this is a bullshit job. So he built a little robot that would snap a picture of the bacon and then compare it against like good bacon. And so he didn't have to stand on the line next to the bacon. I was like, holy shit, you are working for me now. When we see those opportunities, we grab them. Also, we have passionate customers. Like the really cool thing about the business at this, I got my fingers stuck in there. The really cool thing about this business at this point of our lifetime is we have a little bit of brand recognition. So people are like, hey, I use you. I'm a huge fan. If you have any job openings, I've used you as a customer for X number of years. We can go back in their account and see what they've ordered, And
I have to imagine that's like an incredible source, because it's not only are they using you, but it means that they were building stuff.
Yeah. But at the beginning, no one knows what the hell SendCutSend is. They don't understand what we're doing. So you have to suffer. You have to convince a lot of people at the beginning. Every startup founder knows that. You have to force them to drink the Kool-Aid. And you're like, come on, man. Like, we're doing this awesome thing. Believe in it. So you do a lot of cheerleading. Then something happens where all of a sudden you're on the other side and they're like cheerleading for you. They're coming and saying, hey, I've used you forever. I think I could add this cool skill to your skill set. What do you think? So oftentimes, like when we post a job, we have hundreds of applicants for a single role. And we get to kind of cherry pick the best of the best. But that comes from 7 years of building brand and culture and everything else. So hire your customers if you can. Hire the best in the field if you can. I said that we don't really hire machinists, and we don't hire sheet metal guys because everything we do is weird. If you're a press brake operator for the last 20 years and you come and get a job at SendCutSend, like it's worthless. The way that we approach it is completely different. And so that 20 years of skill set is not very valuable to us. We'd rather have someone that is able to adapt and come up with novel solutions that, approach something in a way that's never been done. If you know too much about something, it can hold you back. It's one of the reasons, like, I try not to know too much about any machine or any process here, so I can still have like a little bit of, first day experience every time I walk through the shop. I'm like, whoa, I've never seen it do that before. Can we make it do that?
You want to be thinking about it from fresh eyes as much as
always
possible.
Fresh eyes, always fresh eyes. But yeah, with staff, it's hire people that can actually do something and they can prove it beyond a resume. Hire based on portfolio, hire based on projects that they've done, whether it's software or even if I was hiring a CFO, I want to see, like, how did you get through COVID? Like, what did your models look like? How did you fundraise? How did you do all this stuff? I don't care what school you went to. I don't care what companies you worked for. I care about what challenges were presented to you and how did you solve them. And that can be applied anywhere.
So has it been another thing where every time you start working, expand, what you're offering and you're setting up new machines and stuff, you're kind of bringing in fresh eyes and fresh blood that know how to operate those machines, know how that sort of like world works. And then you're adopting those people and they look at the other facets of your business and they're able to look at it from a little bit of a fresh perspective, and figure out things that you may not have come to you on your own.
Yeah, I think if you know, hey, that machine cannot cut that material, you're not going to try it. But we don't know. We try not to know. We're just like, let's see if it'll do it. And we're like, oh shit, machine caught on fire, whatever. It's like, okay, how do we try it again and make it work? And we keep pushing and pushing until it works. I encourage everyone to not know too much about their own business. I said earlier that my job now is to do gym only things. The side effect of that is I'm not doing everything to perfection out on the floor. So I still have those fresh eyes. When I walk out on the floor, I can see things that other people aren't seeing, because it's still new to me because I'm not doing the same thing every single day.
So I think that there's kind of this cultural zeitgeist or the general feeling that a lot of like younger people have is the world is not necessarily set out to work for them, and they can't really build a life and career in the same way that they maybe could have 50 years ago. How are you thinking about that and like kind of inspiring young people to get after it and do meaningful things?
Yeah, I think, the talk right now is like, hey, in the 50s, single income,
you could buy a house.
You could buy a house, you can raise 7 kids. My grandfather, I think there's 5 kids, single income forever. They had a house with a pool. And, they had 2 cars and everything, and that was fine on his income. He actually worked at Lockheed on the SR-71 program. So that was totally possible back then. Now people think it's only possible if you're a software engineer, some
making $400,000 a year.
Yeah, a total comp, $500K, whatever. In machining, in sheet metal, in the trades, in manufacturing, that used to be the case, that you could make good money. And then it kind of went away because it was a race to the bottom. People were competing, with offshore or whatever. And I don't think it has to be that way. We pay our people well because, at first we started with, because we're weird, we have to train people how to do things our way. If we invest all this training in them, I want them to stay. If they stay, they're extremely valuable. Like, if you are churning people out constantly, it's incredibly expensive. You put all this time in onboarding and training, and then they leave to go somewhere else. You have to start all over again. There's massive opportunity costs. So we're like, hey, let's pay well. Also, I think it's right. Like, if you build all your models to allow for a, well-compensated employee, it makes a better product. It makes better customers, et cetera. So
they're not going to be looking out, over their shoulder, trying to figure out what is the next leap where I can actually build this future that I'm excited about.
Well, let's provide growth from within. Let's take good care of these people so that they care about the products, they care about the equipment. Dude, if you grab someone off the street for like $13 an hour and you're like, hey, run this $1 million machine. If that thing starts smoking or making a terrible noise, they're not going to care. They're like, I don't know. My job is to hit the green button. You pay the guy $40 an hour. He's pretty happy for that job. He knows that machine takes care of him and his buddies. Pride. Exactly. So you have better equipment uptime, and it pays for itself over and over again. That generosity isn't for naught. You work it back. But I hear, oh, nobody wants to work anymore. These kids, they don't want to work anymore. No, they don't want to work for you. They don't want to work for this, 70-year-old asshole that started out making $2.25 an hour, and he thinks that $20 an hour is like, you should be jumping up and down for that, especially in a dark, dirty, gross place. And there's no AC or whatever. No. If you say nobody wants to work anymore, they don't want to work for you. And
you've created an environment that's just not exciting and not, well, the thing is too, is, you're spending a lot of time and money and thoughtfulness on trying to create an environment where you can go hire that guy for $40 an hour and they're excited. They're looking forward and trying to figure out like problems and solutions. You said 350 employees. If you do the right job, you have 350 people that are all independently looking out for ways to improve the business and improve how the thing works and make customers happier.
Yeah, they actually care. When you're making minimum wage or you're getting taken advantage of, the main thing that you're doing on all your breaks and on your lunch is looking for a new place. And if your buddy leaves and finds a better place, you're going to go with him. One of the things I'm most proud of is when we get, we'll get one new guy and then he's like, ooh, this place is awesome. And he'll grab like two of his buddies from his old job and then a few more.
The people that he knows are the best.
So we have little pockets of this. We have families, we have like most of the Andreessens work here. We have all kinds of Leitners. We have like 6 Leitners or something that work here. So we have husbands and wives and sons and daughters and whatever. And that's really cool. But then we also have these guys that, oh, hey, we all used to work at X and then, they work here now. So I hear talk that in order to be competitive in manufacturing, we have to automate. We have to have dark factories. Manufacturing can't afford to pay people, living wages. I'm proving the opposite. We're profitable. We pay our staff well. If you pay them well, they care about the product. It actually saves you money, and we see it time and time again.
That's the difference between, again, being frugal and cheap.
Yeah, 1,000,000%.
Final question: what's the hardest thing you've overcome?
Hardest thing that I've overcome? The hardest thing that I've overcome. That's a tough question because, it's just like a series of challenges constantly. Every single day. I've been really lucky. I've been with my wife for over 20 years. My kids are great. I've been punched in the face a lot in business. We've had highs and lows, but that's just part of it. I overcome little challenges every minute. Sitting here with you is a challenge. I'm like, oh my God, do I look okay? Am I sitting up straight? Am I sweating through my shirt? And then I'll go on to the next one. I don't remember a whole lot because I'm moving on to the next thing. It's like women in childbirth,
You're forgetting as much as you can
as
all the time.
Pushing that kid out. They're like, I'm never doing this again. And then a week later, they're like, oh, I'd love another one. So they forget. I have that same problem. I don't know. I love challenges. I love a challenge when you're working within constraints. If you put me in a grocery store and said, make me something for dinner,
you wouldn't know where to start.
No, dude. I'm like, oh, fish with chicken on top of steak and rice and noodles. But if you give me a constraint, you're like, hey, dude, here's a can of chili and some graham crackers. I'll be like, all right, dude, we're gonna whip something up. It's gonna be great. So I don't know. People have overcome way bigger challenges than I'll ever face. they've gone through cancer, they've gone through the loss of a child or a loved one or whatever. I haven't had those things happen. So anything that happens in business is just a challenge. You get punched in the face, you bounce back up. And I'm having a good enough time to where I keep getting in the ring every day to get punched in the face. So it makes you strong. I'm super happy to do it.